Hello, and welcome to Rosie's Primary School pressure canning workshop, which is all about chicken today. And we're going to be pressure canning some chicken, and we're also going to be making something to go with it as well. So I'm all set up. I've got my chicken here. I've got my jars. There's not much else to have, to be honest. So I haven't cut the chicken up. I've had a bit of a do. I've had failed farm boxes turning up, then catching up, in which time I'd already ordered some more. So now I've got double chicken and all sorts of possible variations. So, but basically, I've got chicken breasts and chicken skinned and boned thighs. I particularly like the thigh meat. I think it holds up very well to the pressure canning. And it's very tasty. So but it all depends what you're going to do with it once you've canned it, and you're then going to use it, of course. Mostly I use mine for curries and the toppings for jacket potatoes and things mixed with other things, because you can just eat this straight out of the jar. I mean, I don't mean sit there with the jar, but you don't need to recook it or reheat it for it to be safe. It's not canned in anything. You don't add any stock. It's just raw as it is, and it cooks in its own juices and ends up. Have I got any here? Yes. Sorry, I should have got this out before. Just ends up in the jar, cooked, and it looks like it's one big lump, but it separates very easily. I don't tend to cut it up very small. I prefer it in bigger lumps, and then it sort of cooks really well and is very useful, you know, if it's but you can make it into pies or whatever you actually want it for your family. So I'm going to wear some gloves because it's just easier in my environment here. And what we're going to do first, I've got all the jars out ready. I'm going to try and sort of evenly fill them. I'm going to do 14, I hope, as I've got so much chicken now. I'll see how it goes. You can be very exact about it and weigh what's going into the jar, but I'm going to sort of do it by eye because it's only for us. So if there's not very much in one of them, then we'll have something else with it. So I'm just going to go through my sort of general pile of chicken and cut in chunks, sort of like that, and then just leave it. That's what I found works best for me over the years I've been doing it, because you can be too small, I think. So what I'm going to do is sort of put it in as I do one piece, is to sort of spread it between the jars I've got. I'm not really sure with the thighs whether they've already been cut up or not. And this way I'll have a mixture of both types of meat in one jar, which is fine. It's most versatile then.
Do you not even put a bit of salt or anything in it?
I don't know. I just do it as is. If you want to, you can season it. I sort of do it when I cook it, to be honest. But you can put herbs in if you want to. You can, and I'm slightly kicking myself because I've got a big bag of mushrooms in the fridge. You can put sliced mushrooms and onion in if you want to, if that's how you want to use it later on. you know, sometimes you just want to tip the jar out and put a cobbler topping on it or something. Then well, that's all the jars now been done once. So, you know, I'm just showing you the plain version. Now this looks fairly cut up, this thigh meat. That's good. You don't need any stock or anything like that. The thigh meat as well is cheaper than chicken breasts, of course. So and it cooks beautifully. Oops. Oh, I'm cutting off any sort of fat as I go. It doesn't matter if it's left on, but anything that's quite big I'm removing. Last two lots were already cut up, so that was all right. So for us, these jars will do one serving, which doesn't look very much, but by the time you've got other things with it, I just prefer to cook enough for a helping each, and that's it. So, but you can put as much as you want to in your jars, but just be careful of the headspace. Keep it to the 3 centimeters or 1 inch to give the chicken room to cook. There's not much you can do about debubbling because there's no liquid in there. It will sort itself out, I've found, so don't worry about that too much. I'm just going to take my gloves off and remove the
So are they 500 jars or are they the 350 ones?
These are 500.
500, yeah.
But I will almost certainly mix some beans or something like that when I cook with it. So, you know, we don't need masses of meat content. Right, now you need to be quite careful about wiping the rims of the jars because when you're sort of dropping the chicken in, you get sort of drips and things like that. So get your vinegar and your jars, get them wiped, put them to one side so you know which ones you've done. If I wanted to make more chicken in the meal, I'd open 2. You know, I'm not. I just find it easier to store the smaller jars, and it does suit our actual appetites. And we've got cold jars, cold chicken. So we should have cold canners, which is, you know, it's a nuisance in a way because it's going to take a bit longer to heat them up, but it's better to have everything at the same temperature. So just pop your lids on. This is great to do if you see a bargain at some point, you know, because there's no very little prep. It's not such a workup to just suddenly buy some chicken and do it, because it's so useful when it's actually on the shelf. Right, that's all my lids, and now the rings. I'm going to get them straight into the canner. Turn the canner on and start getting things heated up. the last of my vinegar into the canner. It's got the scale in the water marking the jars on the outside, because that's a shame, you know. I know the food doesn't look beautiful, but it's sort of nice to be able to see what's in the jar. And if it's all white on the outside, it doesn't look very good and not that easy to see sometimes.
That's a mammoth chicken session.
I use it a lot, so it's good to get it done, you know. Right, everything in, and it's turned on, and the vinegar's in, so I'm going to put the lid on. Where's my, there we go. There we are. I'll turn it around so we can see the gauge. Make sure I haven't knocked it off center, which I have, of course. I think that's all right. Okay, put it on max to heat up. And yeah, just recap. So you can just plain chicken, no added liquid, and I don't add anything else, but if you want to add some salt, you can add mushrooms, you can add onions chopped up, so that if you like things with chicken, you know, chicken and mushrooms and that, you can just use it then straight out of the jar into a casserole dish or whatever, and put on the topping. The yogurt topping is very good for this sort of thing. Yogurt and plain flour and salt, and just dropped onto the top and baked, and then you've only got a few vegetables to do if that's what you want to have with it, and off you go. So the other thing I'm going to be making today is what I use this for a lot, which is I hesitate to say, as it is actually coronation day of King Charles III today, but the sort of British staple of coronation chicken salad in the summer, which is chicken in a sort of mildly curried sauce. It's a bit of a workup to make from scratch, but I've devised a chutney-based sauce in a jar, which you can just use out of the jar and mix with mayonnaise, and then mix your chicken in. And this chicken is great for that. I drain off the juices and just mix it with the mayonnaise, and then we have it on jacket potatoes with a salad, or we might just have it with a salad for lunch. We could have it in a sandwich. You can spread it in a sandwich. It's got a, you know, nice texture. On the recipe, I say keep it in the fridge, but I have actually found, I've said that because I've devised the recipe and I haven't had it tested. And at the time I wrote the recipe, I hadn't even really made it and used it for very long. So, but I know myself now it keeps on the shelf perfectly all right. But once you've opened it, I would keep it in the fridge, and also obviously the mayonnaise, and you can mix it together then to your own taste. So what I'm going to do now is to prep all of the vegetables and everything while we're waiting for the canner to get up to temperature and vent. And then when we come back, once we're at that stage, we'll have a bit of a break, and then we'll come back and we'll actually make the chutney afterwards. So I need a clean mat, clean knife. I've got my various ingredients. Choose some vinegar, some butter, I've got oil, but what I want to cut up is the apples, onion, and mangoes. The recipe is on your download sheet, so it should be. I can't put anything in that pan for the moment because I've got to do the onion first. So I've called it coronation chicken sauce, I think. I don't know, that's what's on my old recipe that I wrote at the time. I don't know what I've called it here. Just chutney.
I think we should call it coronation chutney, meaning as we're making it today.
Yeah, well, that's what it ends up kind of making. It's not exactly the same, but it's good enough for a quick meal. You know, if you were making it for a big crowd, you'd probably want to make it from scratch and all the rest of it. For a quick meal, it is so tasty. I mean, it's one of our favorite things. So my lovely assistant here is nodding like mad. He absolutely loves it. And it's, you start eating it and then we look at each other and we say, damn, this is good. You know, it's always a surprise. I don't know why, but so I thought that you would like it too. And it's easy to make, even if you haven't done preserving or anything like that. I'm just going to find myself a bowl to put this in because I can't put it in my preserving pan. The coronation chicken was actually devised for Queen Elizabeth's coronation as a sort of street party food that was relatively cheap because it was just after the war. Well, I was born in 1953, the year of the coronation, and that was what 3, 4, 5 years after the war, and there was still rationing. But somewhere in communities, most people had chickens during the war, and I guess one or other of them was sacrificed. And the dish was devised to feed lots of people with not many sort of ingredients. So here we are. I couldn't make a coronation quiche sauce. So I'm going to cut up the apples. It doesn't matter if they go a bit brown because the sauce will be that sort of color anyway. And I've got 3 massive apples here. I'm just going to put the whole lot in, although it says 500 grams prepared weight. So I don't want one cooking apple sort of rolling around without home. So I'll just put it in. Again, if it's just for us, it doesn't really matter if it's a bit too appley. If I was selling it, I'd stick to the recipe. It's great to have on your shelf. Great for students to take back with them to uni because they can have it, you know, a jacket potato. They don't even have to put the chicken in, to be honest. You could just, you know, have this on a jacket potato because it's really tasty. So you can spread it in sandwiches for packed lunches and things. Very well behaved. Plus, if you want it more as a chutney, you don't have to mix it with mayonnaise. You can just have it as it is. But, cutting them up quite evenly. The apples are huge. They will cook down, but I don't want it to take too long, so I'm cutting it up quite small. And my panner's starting to make noises, which is good. This is how I always peel my apples. I'm not very good at holding big apples and peeling and doing it quite fine. So I always cut it in half, then cut it in segments like an orange, take out the middle core, and then run the knife down the back under the skin. And you can usually peel it quite finely like that. And there's not so much slipping about and risk of cutting yourself. We can eat bruised bits out, of course. If you make this in the autumn when the apples are around, it will keep for Christmas. It's good to have around as a quick sort of filler for things, or to put on the table for people as a chutney. It's not really cooking apple season at the moment, but enough for my extra apple. So huge these as well. I don't know how they grow them so big.
I'm ever so sorry, Rosemary. I'm going to have to abandon. I've got a friend with a really poorly dog who's made the decision to put her to sleep, and she's asked me if I'll go to the vets with her. So
Oh, goodness.
I'm going to go and abandon. I'll come back and make me chutney by the instructions.
Yes, yes, of course. Yeah.
All right. I'm ever so sorry.
Don't worry. That's a greater need.
I shall avidly await the upload.
Okay.
All right. Bye.
Yeah. Bye-bye. Last one. Right. The apple done. Now we've got two mangoes, two ripe mangoes. Now that's it. This is the easy bit. Not. I used to have a brilliant mango cutter that was like one of those apple cutters. But since I bought it, the mangoes have got bigger and bigger. And I lent it to somebody at a class, and she used it on a mango that was too big and managed to break it. So we're back to square one. As a nightmare. You just got to do, what you find easiest to get most of the flesh off without, wearing most of it. So you've got to sort of look for where the stone is, which is that way. What I tend to do is to cut round as much as I can. If it's ripe enough, you can sometimes twist it. No, I'm just going to have to take the skin off and then cut the flesh away from the stone. It is nice and ripe, but it's quite firm, which is good. I hate it when they're so ripe. I mean, great for eating if they're really, really ripe, and you've got sort of juice running all over you. And I always remember Terry Wogan years ago used to say the only way to eat a mango was to strip off it and sit in the sink, which is about right. You can use frozen mango if you can get it, and that's really easy to use and already diced for you. So, that's a good option. But I was amazed. I was able to get them, and B, that they weren't too hard. You got to be careful there with the knife because they get so slippery. Now I'm going to sort of try and cut in and take off as much as I can. Imagine people sort of screaming at the video saying, no, 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 don't do it like that. And you always end up with a mango that you think you can get more of. And somebody will, if you're doing it in a sort of group, somebody will come along and pick it up and start, but you actually can't, you know, because it looks like you've left half the flesh on there, but it doesn't matter sort of how mangled it gets because it's going to cook down. So I'm not serving it in a fruit salad or anything. Try and get some more off like this. One down. Right, there we are. Fit for a coronation. It's one. Wipe my hands because they're quite slippery. Let me do the same again. If you have got one of those super duper mango cutters, you can just cut it in half down through the skin with the mango cutter, and it will produce two sort of cheeks of mango, and then you can scoop it out with a big spoon in one piece and then cut it up. So they are absolutely brilliant, but I've never found one that was big enough for the sort of modern mangoes. It's like oranges or like the apples. I mean, everything's getting so huge that you can't actually get the cutter over the mango. So one day perhaps they'll make them big enough. Right, now let's get something that's relatively flat. I can then cut down the sides. Ugh. I expect people that prepare these sort of for a living just make about three deft cuts and the job is done. Like when you see them preparing coconuts and things like that, pineapples, it looks so easy, but there we go. Slice these into pieces and then into sort of cubes that way. Right. That'll help stop the apple going too brown as well. Those on top. Then the last thing I'm going to prepare is my onion. And I've done that last because I'm going to leave it on the board because that's the thing I need to cook first. So I don't want to put it into the bowl. I'm just going to slice it up and leave it here till I'm ready to come back to it. It doesn't matter, I've cut the mango up on there before. It's all going into the same pan. It's just a ordinary sized onion. You don't want anything too huge. And just take the peel off. It's a very papery peel that shatters rather than peels off. There's an ominous dark bit there, so I hope it isn't, you know, it's just its colour. So I just slice it down through the middle and then slice it across as much as possible. It's decided to slither apart, of course. So and this is because we have onions that are kept in gas and they all get very slippery, especially toward, we're sort of coming up to the new harvest in a couple of months' time, and these are all a bit. I'm actually growing a lot more onions this year, so I'm hoping what I'll do, rather than stringing them up and sort of hanging them up, I'll prep them and get them chopped, and then and possibly freeze them, and then I can use them without having to chop as I go, as it were. Those will separate down and cook down okay in a bit. Ah, goodness, yeah. There we are. It's the end of them. My goodness, there was only one. I should leave that there, ready to put into my chutney after we come back. I'm just going to go and wash my hands and clean up, and then I don't think we're far off venting. It's all starting to sound familiar. I won't be a minute. Right, it's good. My other ingredients, I've got some oil, some butter, some demerara sugar, sultanas, and I need some spices as well, which is curry and some garam masala. So that's all ready for when we come back. Oh, and my vinegar, of course. So no venting yet. It's always the same if you do something from cold or you've got the canner quite full, it does take a while to get to heat everything up. But the vent pipe here on the top is starting to sort of spit a little bit, which is always a good sign. And there's nothing like a watched pot, of course. That butter, otherwise I'm going to forget to put it in. I had a photo shoot here in between our last session and this session, and both the photographer and I wanted to get good shots of the canner venting, and I can't tell you, she was almost stood on the table, you know, trying to get the right angle to get to even see it on camera. I mean, it was quite the job. And I was worried because I actually, for the photo shoot, prepared a lot of beans, and I thought that was the simplest thing to make so that she could take photographs all the way through. So I did all these beans, and I filled the canner up again with 14 jars of beans, I think. And then we sat and waited for it to vent. And then it was venting and venting and venting. No, just a minute, just one more. I think she was stood on a chair, she had lights behind it, and I thought, it's going to boil dry in a minute. There's not going to be any water left. But there's never a happy medium, is there? You know, that day it was venting like mad. I mean, she got some beautiful photographs, but I was worried that it was actually that was going to be the one time that the canner boiled dry. But we were okay. And then the beans were okay as well. Thank goodness. But in the end, because she would sort of take it, because it kind of was venting in a sort of puff, and she just kept missing it. So in the end, she took a video of it, and then she captured one of the sort of screenshots. So it's a fantastic picture. Oh dear. I had bits of carving held up against it and all sorts, but it because I mean, with something like that, you can't fake it. It's well, not without a lot of difficulty. And so I thought, well, the easiest thing is to make something. It's the opposite to fake it till you make it. You know, we couldn't make it to fake it. So, but we keep on having this discussion recently about the food that is advertised on television and how synthetic it looks, how plastic, how it looks. And there's a particular one, I think it's for one of the chicken people in a sort of batter coating, a bit like KFC. It might be that. And they've got these impossible looking pieces of chicken and they're dipping it into a sauce. Nobody ever eats anything because I think that's just like sealing wax. It's red wax and they dip it in and it comes out and it's all glossy, but it doesn't drip. And then she goes to eat it and doesn't. And we've got quite a thing going on now, is spotting the fake food in the adverts. You know, the McDonald's burger that looks sort of like the burger looks like it's made out of foam or something, and all painted and coloured, and the sesame seeds are just so, and the drippy cheese coming out of it. You know, it's like a sheet of plastic that somebody's melted with a hot gun or something. It's just astonishing the lengths that people go to photograph food. It's a completely separate industry. So here we were trying to do it for real. I thought, oh, please just get the shot and then I can close the canner and we can, you know, you can go and I can sit here and recover while the beans cook, which is what I did. Otherwise, oh, I've got my timer here ready. Here goes. I stand there watching it. It's going to be impossible. Slightly similar to the Wednesday class we were doing, smoking your own food, and so it's the same kind of thing. You put all the wood chips in and you close the smoker up and everything, and you have to wait for wisps of smoke to appear as the wood chips heat up, and it's just sort of standing there waiting for the smoke. It's like, there we go. Okay, well, I'm going to put the timer on for the 10 minutes and we'll come back when I start getting it up to pressure. Right, I'll see you in a minute. Okay, my timer's just gone off, so we can put the jiggler weight on. I'm going to take one of the washers off, so I want it at £10, not 15. And I'll pop that on the vent there. And as soon as there we go, the locks come up as well. Although this is a newer canner than the one that I lent to the community group, the lock still doesn't pop up of its own accord. It gets so much water around it that it kind of forms a seal, and you have to keep wiping it until it will pop up of its own accord. So that now the canner is locked, the pressure will start to build, which will show on the gauge here. And once it's at £10, then we can start timing for the chicken, which will, because I've got 500 ml jars, will be, I think, 75 minutes. 75 and 94 litre jars. So I can get my timer set up with 75 on it, and it's ready to start when it's up to pressure. It's important to have a timer of some sort because it is so much time intervening that it's easy to forget what time you started it off and everything. So you do need that prompt to say, you know, it's time to switch off. Okay, well, once it gets up to the £10, I will start the timer, which I guess is going to be in about another 10 minutes. So that will take us up till 4 o'clock. So I see you back here at about 5:30. We can turn the canner off, leave it to depressurize while we make the coronation chutney. I'll see you in a bit. Hello, welcome back. My canner's turned off and is depressurizing, I hope. And we're going to make the coronation chicken chutney while that's happening, and which goes very well with the chicken that we've canned. You can just use the chicken out of the jar, drain it and mix it. I mix 50-50 of the chutney and mayonnaise to make the dressing for the salad, or it's a fantastic jacket potato topping. So very little work to assemble it when you want a meal, and I can recommend it. So I've got my pan here, preserving pan or a big pan. Just put the heat on, and we want about 5 grams or a lump of butter going in to start it. It's an unusual start to a chutney, I know, but there we go. And some oil, about 2 tablespoonfuls. That's that, let that heat up. At least the rain stopped here. I don't know about where you are, but Been raining most of the day. I've chopped my onion already, which I did earlier. You saw me do, and that's sitting there ready. And I'm going to need some spices as well. I've got some mild, or this is medium curry powder, just straightforward curry powder, and some garam masala as well, which is and once the oil and the butter has melted together, I'm just going to fry the spices in it for a couple of minutes just to start releasing all their flavour. They always do better if you kind of cook them and get them heated up. It releases the flavour in them. Another pan to watch the heat up. Oh dear. And then I've got, so we're going to have teaspoonfuls of those. I've got the apple and the mango all done. That's going in. I've got some sultanas. I need salt, 125 grams of sultanas, 150 mils of cider vinegar, and 150 grams of demerara sugar. So where's my salt gone? There it is.
How much salt are we going to be putting in? Because that isn't in the recipe, I don't think. I didn't spot it.
A teaspoonful of salt.
Teaspoon. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. That.
I'll put that in a minute. Well, now the coronation's finished, they're all putting the kettle on, aren't they? And we're low on power. We're at the end of the line in the village, and it very often sort of drops away quite quickly if we're not careful. All right. Need a teaspoon, 2 teaspoons of curry powder. You can use whatever one you want. It's nothing, it just gives a bit of a warm background. It's not supposed to sort of burn your mouth or anything. And then a teaspoon of the garam masala. Go around a bit. Butter starting to heat up. And then just put your onion into that spicy mixture and let them cook for 2 or 3 minutes. Just to they're translucent. You don't need to, get them browned or anything like that. Right, actually on my list, it's the other way around. Put the onion in and the spices, but it doesn't really matter. Then you're going to add the mangoes and the apple. Give that a good stir around. Right, that's the sultanas. I've got there 125 grams of sultanas. Teaspoon of salt. And cider vinegar. That is 150 ml cider vinegar. Wait to get some heat into that now. It was cooked down a little bit. And then we're going to add the sugar last, once the fruit has softened slightly. Sometimes adding the sugar earlier on to something like this keeps the fruit more whole, and actually you want it to cook down so that the apple is a sort of background sauce kind of texture. cooking apple but breaks down quite quickly. So that's good. And the mango's already soft. You don't need to cook the mango until it's totally soft and sort of squidgy. You leave it in lumps. It's quite nice in the finished chutney to be able to identify some pieces of mango. Once it starts to look a bit drier, put the sugar in because that helps to sort of make it more liquid again. And then you need to stir it until the sugar is dissolved. You don't want any crystals of sugar left whole because they multiply in the chutney and make it gritty. And turn the heat down a bit now. That immediately creates more liquid. Don't ask me the science of it because I don't know. But stir it until you can't feel that sugar anymore. Any of the crystals, they need to be dissolved completely. I'm just batching some of the bigger pieces of apple because once the sugar's in, as I say, they tend to stay more solid. But if you just touch them, they break apart. So, and it makes it more of a cohesive texture than kind of a thick liquid with lumps of apple in it. Once it's cooked down nicely and you've got some liquid left, you don't want it too runny, but also bear in mind once you put the chutney into the jar, the fruits and the sultanas will soak up some of that liquid, so it will sort of thicken up in the jar. I'll turn my heat off now because I don't want it to catch or overcook. I've got my jars here ready, and I've got my wide mouth funnel and my ladle. When you're jarring up with these, it's not like canning or pressure canning. You need to fill the jars right to the top of the jar and then put the lid on, because once this cools down, it will shrink and it will form a vacuum at the top of the jar, which will keep the contents really safe because nothing can grow in a vacuum. So it's essential to do that process, to fill it right to the top. And that's just about the texture I want it, you know, sort of thick, but with still a bit of liquid that will be absorbed with the apple breaking down, but the mangoes still in sort of distinctive lumps. So I'm just going to start putting it into the jars. I'd normally take it off of the hob, but I can't find my heat mat, so I'm just going to be careful. We are right to the top. I've got actual mat I'm going to put here because as we take out the chutney, what's left is going to catch that much more quickly. So I'll put it down there. Take my spoon out. I'm lucky I might get this into exactly 4 jars. I didn't know how many I'd need because I knew I was putting the extra apple in. So it's always a bit hit and miss. A little bit around the edges. Make sure you get a decent ladle for jam and chutney making, because if you get a sort of squidgy silicone one like this, you can really get into the edges, and you don't want to leave anything behind after bothering to make it. And my lids are going on. And then, I mean, you can eat it straight away if you want to, but it would probably benefit from a couple of weeks to meld and mature and soak those juices up. Oh, right. Those over there a minute. Put my mat there. And on there while I open the canner. So that's 4 nice jars. That will last us, I don't know, about a month. No, it will probably last us well into the summer, and then I'll make some more, and to take us on up to Christmas. It's such a useful thing to have on the shelf, I found. And you can use it just as a regular chutney on the side of the plate, you know, for whatever you want it for. Okay, canner is done. Let's open that. I've taken all the bits off. And off with the lid. See if I can reach in here and get some jars out. Oops. Don't be alarmed that it's all sort of sinks to the bottom and doesn't look very much. It's just the way it cooks, but it's better than overfilling the jars and it's siphoning. It's not pretty, I'll say that. It's never a good look, the cooked chicken. Anyway, that's half a dozen of them out. I've got to get the others out in a minute. Oh yes, I'll empty it in a second. And so I hope you find the chicken useful. I'm sure you will. And next time we'll be heading off a bit from my normal sort of presentation and making an actual meal in a jar, which I don't normally do, but I think it's worth it in this case. And this is a white chicken chili. So it will be chicken again. You'll need to buy same sort of chicken, and we'll make that. And for vegetarians, I think probably you could do the same recipe, but with beans. Some of there are beans in the recipe anyway. You could just up the quantity, I would think. I'm still not got to the bottom of how tofu behaves in the canner. So, but if you wanted to get some and just experiment a little bit with that to see what happens, and then you would know whether you could add tofu or soya, whatever the equivalent is, in instead, and do the same recipe. But so I'll see you next time. Have a good fortnight and enjoy, and I'll see you soon.